Hi, this is Rabbi Chaim Coffman. I want to welcome everyone to our 20th installment in the Torah portion of the week. We're holding by Parshas Tetzaveh. Parshas Tetzaveh is mainly about the big day kahuna, about the clothing for the high priest. Also talks about the menorah as well. So I want to get straight into it. The Torah says, beginning of Parshas Tetzaveh, chapter 27, verse 20, it says, "Now shall you command the children of Israel, they shall take for you pure olive oil, press for illumination, kindle a lamp continually." So the Torah here says that you're going to use olive oil, pressed olive oil, to keep the menorah lit. And as Rashi, other commentaries say that the first drop of oil that comes out is going to be used to light the menorah. The other oil will be used for other aspects of sacrifices, etc. But the first part of the oil that comes out gets to be used for the menorah itself. So there's an interesting thing my Rebbe here points out. Says, "Mori v'Rebbe Rav Agon Ramoshe Stern Bach Shlita." Maybe well. It says in the beginning. It says, "Take for me this oil." Right, as the Torah here uses the language that you command the Jewish people to take for you, right? Vayikhu, you shall take. They will take, right? They should take for you, right? So my Rebbe points out with a hint over here. It says, "Take for you," as the Talmud says, not for me, right? So there's a hint over here that the lights of the menorah, the candles, what do the candles represent? Right, the candles represent Torah. Ner mitzvah, v'Torah or. Ner, candle, is compared to a mitzvah, the light of the mitzvah. Ner mitzvah, Torah or. Torah is compared to light. Therefore, there's a command that the oil should come through Moshe Rabbeinu himself and not through anybody else. Why? Because to teach you that learning Torah can only be if we have a Kabbalah ish mi pi ish ad Moshe Rabbeinu. So that means that whatever we do, whatever command that we do, whatever mitzvah that we do, is only because we have a tradition that goes from man to man all the way to Moshe Rabbeinu. Right? That's how oral tradition was passed down. Right? It wasn't supposed to be written down. It's supposed to be transmitted orally, but the problem was the rabbis saw that temples destroyed, Jews are being dispersed, so they allowed it to be written down, even though different people were supposed to memorize different parts, etc. But they were afraid it was going to get lost, and it probably would have, right? No question, it probably would have. So they were afraid, and therefore they allowed it to be written down. So Rebbe points out another thing, that not only is tradition that we have a tradition one to another that goes all the way to Moshe himself, but not only that, a person's not allowed to make novelties in Torah that strays from the path of Torah that Moshe gave. So we learn out a few things from here. We'll try and give some relevant examples as well. Two important ideas. One idea is that you can't make Torah up on your own, right? You have to have a tradition, right? It's not a 5-year option to renew. It's not like, well, if I feel like doing it, fine. If not, I'll just make it up as I go along. We have a tradition that goes back all the way to Moshe. Remember, the Mishnah is a commentary on the verses in the Torah. The Gemara is a commentary on the Mishnah. The Mishnah and the Gemara make up what we know today as the Talmud. So, and then, through the extrapolation of the early commentators, later commentaries, etc., we have the Shulchan Aruch, all the laws when it comes to, about prayer, about the holidays, about blessings, about laws of damages, marriage, divorce, right? All these different things come from this tradition. Right? Now again, this tradition's not just, made up and, etc. It was an oral tradition. We had an oral tradition that was given at Mount Sinai as well, because we never would have understood what the Torah wanted from us had there not been a running oral tradition. Right? We've seen that a number of times. That's not the point, what we want to make tonight. The point that we want to make tonight is that you cannot make up stuff on your own. Right? You can't forge a different path because you want to. Or because you think, quote unquote, times have changed. Because times have changed, and we don't live in an agricultural society, and we're not living in Victorian England or whatever the case may be, we can just do whatever we want. Well, that's not true. Right? You have to have a Masorah. You have to have some sort of tradition to base what you want to do, and therefore it may or may not be valid. If you have what to back it up with, fine. If you don't, you just say, well, I want to change things because I want to change things. Okay, that's not Torah anymore. So we'll give an example. We'll give a few examples. One example is, look what happened at Mount Sinai, right? Or before Mount Sinai. Before Mount Sinai, the Jews come out of Egypt. The Jews then go to Mount Sinai and get the Torah. So the Jews coming out of Egypt, one event, passed down generation to generation. And we have many customs and many things that we do based on that one event. So on the 14th of Nisan, or the 15th, on the night of the 15th, which is a few months away, so women are starting to get a little bit nervous now, because we're getting about a month to Purim, which means we're 2 months to Passover, so we're, so they're getting a little bit nervous, about having to clean and, get everything ready before that, but we got plenty more to speak about, Passover and Purim when we get there. So we're not going to jump there yet. But imagine you go to a Passover Seder, right? At a Passover Seder, there used to be 4 generations at the Seder. There used to be a great-grandfather, grandfather, a father, and a child. Now the great-grandfather tells over the story, and usually a parent will never lie to a child. Right? This generation might be different, but in general, a parent is not necessarily going to lie to a child. Now, remember, one time, the great-grandfather was the youngest child at the Seder. So if you go back 80 of those generations, we have 4 generations at the Seder, right? You go back all the way to the giving of the Torah Mount Sinai. That's not, you might say, 80 generations, those 4 generations, sounds like a long time. Yeah, maybe it does. Right, but 80 of those generations, you go back to Mount Sinai. Be that as it may, with all the things that happened in Egypt, and the coming out, etc. So if you go anywhere in the world, you go to North America, go to South Africa, go to Asia, Europe, wherever there are Jews are, on the 15th of Nisan, you're going to have 3 matzahs, 4 cups of wine, and a 5th cup for Eliyahu Hanavi, or Elijah the prophet. And you're going to go through the story of coming out of Egypt. The father tells the story to the son, everybody's there, right, listening intently, acting out different things in the Haggadah, etc. But that is a one event in history that we have all these things that we do because of it, right? Passover Seder, in the whole story of Passover, and the whole week is based on that. The evening service is based on the coming out of Egypt. The parchment written in a mezuzah is all about coming out of Egypt. There are many, many things we do that have to do with the coming out of Egypt. So this was passed down orally, generation to generation. So, you could say, well, maybe it's just a big game of telephone, right? By the time you get to the end, you have 50 people in line. By the time you get to the end, it doesn't sound like what the first person said. Well, that may be true. In this case, things are codified. Things are organized. Even though it wasn't supposed to be written down, and had it not been written down, we wouldn't have it today, that's for sure. But at the end of the day, what we have written down, everyone agrees. Right? You're not going to go anywhere in the world and find someone's going to have, at their seder, they're going to have 5 matzahs. Or they're going to have 8 cups of wine, or 2 cups of wine. And they're not going to have a cup for Elijah the prophet. It used to be in the 70s. In the 70s, the conservative movement in America, I'm sure there's still Haggadahs like this that exist, they added on, right, for the sake of Soviet Jewry, and right, they identified tremendously, with Soviet Jewry, and people who weren't allowed to come out, to leave the former Soviet Union. So comparing the bondage that the Jewish people went through in Egypt, they wanted to compare it as well to the former Soviet refugees that weren't allowed to leave. Right, the Jewish refugees weren't allowed to leave. So they added to their Haggadah an extra matzah. The extra matzah was the matzah for those Soviet Jews that couldn't get out. Now keep in mind, obviously, it doesn't say anywhere in the Talmud or commentaries or whatever, you have the right to add, onto any mitzvah. Right? In this case, you add an extra matzah. Right? They add an extra matzah, symbolic of the Russian Jews not being able to get out. Now you asked the $1 million question. Right? We mentioned before, you're not allowed to make a new path in Torah. Right? The Torah says you're not allowed to add or subtract to it. Right? You're adding on to it. It's like to say you have another mitzvah of eating some more matzah. People want to be more lenient, eat less matzah. You want to, you want them to eat more matzah. Or you say maybe it's just symbolic, it just sits there. Like the cup of Elijah, you don't drink it. Right? Here you don't eat the matzah, it's symbolic. Okay, maybe. But I'll ask the $1 million question. Right? I'll ask the $1 million question. The $1 million question is, how long did that last for? Right? If you want to tell me it lasted and it was a good thing and, brought more people closer to Torah, maybe we'll have a discussion. Maybe. Probably not. But maybe. How long did it last? Didn't even last a generation. You can say, glasnost, perestroika, they got out, whatever. Okay, it doesn't apply anymore. Right? Anyone who wants to leave can leave. So, something that's not based in Torah, it's not based on a source. Rebbe mipi Rebbe, right? Rebbe from the mouth of his Rebbe. If he heard from his Rebbe, it's one thing. He makes it up on his own, it's something else. There's a general rule that the Talmud says, a person cannot make a kal v'chomer unless his Rebbe did. If his Rebbe didn't, you can't do it. A kal v'chomer means you're going from something that is less stringent to something that is stringent. Right? Something kal, which is light, literally, to chomer, which is more stringent. Just like this thing is like this, and we're leaning to whatever, I want to be strict, whatever the case is. Right? In other words, I can say, just like this is like this, in a lighter case, I can make it even in a stronger case. Be that as it may, it's brought in a number of times that a person cannot make such a deduction in the Talmud. Right? No rabbi could make such a deduction as this in order to prove a point, even if it's got halachic ramifications. You can't do it if your Rebbe didn't say it. If you don't have a tradition that you can do it, then you can't do it. But you might say this person was so great and, he could have done it. You can't do things on your own. Right? This is a very good point, a very good case in point. You want to make something, make a conclusion, make a halachic ramification, right? Whatever you want. It's a great idea. Problem is, no one else said it but you. If no one else said it by you, then it's probably not valid. In this case, it's for sure not valid. Because no one else makes such a statement. So, tradition is important. People misuse that word. They say, oh, it's only a tradition. Right? Well, what is a tradition exactly? Right? If we look at the Talmud, we look at the scope of Jewish law, what is tradition exactly? Tradition is based on precedent. It doesn't come out of thin air. Right? You have traditions that are based on something. We might not know what it is. We might not fully understand it. Doesn't mean it's not based on anything. So, the idea is that whatever I do, whatever mitzvah I do, it's there. It's either based on an explicit verse in the Torah, it's based on an extrapolation of what the Torah meant, or whatever the case is. It's not made up as we go along. There are other things, there's differences, some differences between Ashkenazim and Sephardim, right? They have some, different traditions and different things. Passover is a good example. Sephardic people eat rice, Ashkenazim don't, right? Other things. So, even if they have different customs, so to speak, 99% of the rest of the Torah they agree with. Again, some customs differ. Maybe in the laws of Shabbos things differ, kashrus things may differ, right? But it's essentially the same Torah. Right? They'll differ on certain things, but in the bigger scheme of things, it doesn't matter. We go through this whole thing where tradition comes from, and how do you get the tradition, and how do we know, and I'm not going down that path per se. I'm just making a general statement to make the point. So these things are based on what the Torah says. So now people may say, oh, the rabbis, they make it up as they go along, and maybe it's divinely inspired, but it wasn't by God, and this and that. So people have a problem. The problem is that, why would you say such a thing? What would motivate a person to say such a thing? So very simply, if we agree, and I was actually, I've argued this a lot with different people. If you look at what the Torah says God gave the Torah to the Jewish people. Whether the people of that generation saw God face to face, so to speak, heard the 10 Commandments, all of them, or they only heard a few of them, and then they died and they were brought back to life, and then Moshe heard the rest and gave it over. Regardless of how it went down, the bottom line is God gave the Torah. If God gave the Torah, and the Christians certainly agree God gave the Torah to Jewish people, the Muslims certainly agree God gave the Torah to the Jewish people. No one denies, and it's the only claim in history of any other so-called religion, it's the only claim that God spoke to an entire nation. Christians will say that, Mr. JC did certain miracles or whatever in front of 3 people. Maybe, in front of a bunch of drunks, or whatever the case is. Not in front of 600,000 men between the ages of 20 and 60, not including women and children. That's about 3 million people. No one else makes such a claim. So, the main religions of the world agree God gave the Torah to the Jewish people. Regardless whether we're chosen now, or we're not chosen, or it's skewed, or whatever, no one disagrees with this. So then the obvious question is, I want to dig a little bit deeper philosophically. The obvious question is, okay, then what did God give us? What did He say? So we have the most amount of mitzvahs of any parsha right after the Torah is given in Parshas Mishpatim. Most of the laws of damages that fill up 3 tremendous volumes of Talmud. Baba Kama, Baba Metzia, Baba Basra. Right? 3 huge volumes of the laws of damages. Majority of the laws come from that parsha and Parshas Mishpatim. So right after the Torah is given, and we get the 10 Commandments, we're giving all these laws about the laws of damages and the laws of slavery. The Eved Ivri, Jewish slave, Eved Kanani, non-Jewish slave, etc. All in one parsha. So now, God gave the Torah. And then, throughout the rest of the Torah, it's being explained what you have to do. It doesn't necessarily explain how to do it. Right? That's why you need an oral tradition for. But it explains what you have to do. Right? As, at the end of the book of Exodus, as the Torah is recapitulating the building of the Mishkan, it's going back and forth with the loops and the beams and the hooks that are copper and gold and this and that, and you're trying to figure it out. You get a picture book trying to figure out how things were put together, what it looked like. Then all of a sudden a verse comes out of nowhere. Seemingly. The verse says you have to keep Shabbos. What do you mean you have to keep Shabbos? We already said by 10 Commandments you have to keep Shabbos. We already learned that some of the laws of Shabbos were given in Mara before the giving of the Torah, when they were still in the desert. What do you mean? What are you talking about? Loops, beams, hooks, kind of like Lincoln logs, thank God for IKEA. You're putting these things together, boom, boom, Hey, why is this thing upside down? Why doesn't it fit in? Murphy Stein's law. You put everything together and you got one piece that doesn't fit. Anyway, then it says you have to keep Shabbos. So the rabbis learn, what do you mean you have to keep Shabbos? What's it doing here? So since the verse is put there in between the building and the Mishkan, there's a connection. All the verses are connected. Right? There has to be a connection. What's the connection? Whatever work was done in the Mishkan, it's forbidden on Shabbos, because you have a juxtaposition of the verses. So that's an oral tradition. So you might say, oh, maybe they got it wrong, maybe this, maybe that. Yeah, maybe. But there are 39 categories of forbidden work a Jew's not allowed to do on Shabbos. All 39 are not mentioned. All 35 out of 39 are not mentioned. There are like 3. Right? 2 out of the 3 are cooking and carrying that you're not allowed to do. The others are learned out. Without an oral tradition, we wouldn't know that. And if you get it wrong, the death for getting Shabbos wrong, if you were warned and there was a temple, there was a Beis Hamikdash, the punishment is skila. Get thrown off a 3-story building, you die. Aim for your head. If you don't die, take a big boulder and kill you. No oral tradition, then we wouldn't know what to do, right? That we understand, that we've spoken about. But here, tradition is not made up. Tradition means, right? Tradition means it's passed down one to another. How do we know all this? Because it was supposed to be oral. It couldn't be oral anymore because they were afraid it was going to be forgotten. It got written down. What we have is what we have. 39 volumes of Talmud. Right? We have the early commentators, later commentaries. In each generation, they interpret what the Torah says. Right? A previous generation today can't argue in a previous generation unless it's precedent from a previous generation. Be that as it may, the laws are organized. If it was a big game of telephone, we'd be in big trouble. Everyone would be doing whatever they want. Keep in mind as well, up until about 250 years ago, everyone was Orthodox. So you have these other so-called movements trying to make innovations. And I would agree 100%, maybe, that if these innovations helped keep the Torah stronger, we can have a discussion. But see, the more you add or the more you subtract, the less authentic it is. And we see, what's the result? Do whatever you want. Into marriage is fine. Right? We're not going to condone it. We'll make a joke out of it, and the result is what it is. So why do I harp on this point? I harp on this point because if you don't have a tradition, you can't make it up. I'll give a few examples, of how silly. I'll give one example how silly it can be. I'll give another example what tradition means. My wife, in the process of becoming religious, asked her rabbi if you're allowed to ride a bike on Shabbos. So the rabbi turned around and said, "You want to know what I do?" She said, "No, I could care less what you do. I want to know, what is the law? What does Jewish law say? Am I allowed to or not?" He said, "Well, I ride a bike on Shabbos." Well, that's not an answer. I do this. Yeah, what's it based on? You have a source for that? No. It's because what I do. I say this. If it's not based on anything, so what? So then you have to see, is riding a bike really a problem? Right, the commentaries say it is, in case it breaks. Right, then you might fix it, forget it's Shabbos. Right, so a bike is out. It's not about preference. It's not about what I want to do, or what I think should be the right thing. Question is, what does the Torah say? What do the commentaries say? What am I allowed to do? In other words, if the Torah was given, then it couldn't be just do whatever you want. It couldn't be, well, if I feel like doing it, fine not. God said you have to do it. You could choose not to. Right? We have free will. You could choose not to. You pay a price for that, but you have the choice. At the end of the day, we still have to do what needs to be done. If not, then, the Torah is a joke. God forbid. You just do it, you do what you want when you feel like doing it. You give God lip service. But again, if everybody agrees, and most of the world agrees, God gave the Torah to the Jewish people, then what does that mean? Does that mean if you were in the Reform line, you didn't get any mitzvahs? If you're in the Conservative line, you got a few. If you're in the Orthodox line, you got everything. Does that make any sense? It doesn't say anywhere like that. Commentaries don't bring that out. God gave the whole thing. Again, you can choose to break your covenant and give it lip service. You have that choice. But he can't say he gave part of it. He gave a quarter of it. He gave it to the fanatics. Show me where that's written. I want to give an example of tradition. I've heard my Rebbe speak about this many times. People who wear blue thread, techelis, on their tzitzis. Now, the blue dye was made from a chilazon. A chilazon seems to be either a certain fish. Right? The Rashi says comes up once in 70 years. Comes up on the dry land. Could be a sheretz, a creepy crawly thing. Right? Tradition's really been lost to what it is. Some say they have found the tradition. They have found what it is and they've reproduced it. Now the question is, are you allowed to wear it? So, the halacha is by tzitzis, if I put in a blue thread and it's not authentic, it's not techelis, we hold that it doesn't nullify the beged. It doesn't nullify the cloth. In other words, the mitzvah is still good. According to one opinion it does, but we don't hold that way. Be that as it may, it doesn't nullify the tzitzis. In other words, if I wear tzitzis with a blue string, then, if they have the right tradition, I'm fulfilling the mitzvah of techelis. If I don't, if it's not the right thing, then I still get the mitzvah of tzitzis also. At the very least, I'll have the mitzvah of tzitzis, I just might not have the mitzvah of techelis. This blue string. So they say, what's the problem? If it's the right tradition, I get an extra mitzvah. If it's not the right tradition, I haven't lost out. So why shouldn't I do it? So I've heard my Rebbe speak about this many times. And he says exactly what he says over here. We don't stray from the path of Torah that we're given. We don't bring in novel things without precedent. In this case, when it comes to a blue string, you're 100% right. It doesn't hurt anybody. It's not against the mitzvah per se, and I haven't lost anything if I wear it. My Rebbe says doesn't matter. You shouldn't wear it for the sole reason that we don't do things if we don't have a tradition. If we don't have a source that's clear, we don't do it. Another example, if you're Persian, all you Persians out there, they have a tradition of which locusts are kosher according to the Torah. Now, if you're Ashkenazim, probably gross you out. I mean, most people probably gross you out. But if you wanted to eat a grasshopper and you're Persian, they have a tradition on which grasshoppers are kosher or not. So great, they find a grasshopper, kosher. Stick it, you can kill it any way you want. Right? There's no ritual slaughter for it. You kill it, you can eat it. And obviously, you shouldn't eat it alive. That's gross. Transgress the Torah prohibition about the shachsu doing something disgusting. Be that as it may, let's say you kill it, dip it in chocolate, great, high in protein, tremendous. Ashkenazim can't do that. So if you're Ashkenazim out there, you're saying, thank God for that. Why can't Ashkenazim do it? Because we don't have a tradition. We don't have a clear-cut tradition on that. So this goes hand in hand. If you don't have a clear-cut tradition, you can't do it. Sephardim, from Persians have, and some Sephardim as well, have a tradition on what is kosher that was passed down. They can eat it if they so choose. So that's the point, right? It's passed down generation to generation, but at the same time, we do not make up things. We don't make up traditions. We don't make up customs if we don't have a precedent for it. At the same time, you can't go making innovations in Torah and stray away from what the Torah says. Right? We can make this video a lot longer showing where oral tradition goes and how it's brought down and how this whole thing's not a big game of telephone, etc. The point, again, not to get lost in the point. Though the point is very simple. The point is, if God gave the Torah, that had to be understood. And you can't understand it without an oral tradition. That oral tradition, at the same time, as Moshe Rabbeinu writes explicitly, you cannot add or subtract to the Torah. Making a fence around the Torah so you don't transgress Torah prohibitions is not adding to the Torah. Adding to the Torah means I put an extra box on my head for tefillin. Adding on the Torah means I have an extra matzah that I eat at the Seder. Or an extra cup of wine. That's adding on to the Torah. Figuring out things in our generation, whether it applies or it doesn't apply, is not adding on to Torah. It's seeing if it applies. Electricity on Shabbos, we've given this example before. Right? It says don't kindle a fire. So is electricity a fire or not? That's not changing the Torah. That's seeing if it applies or not. So that's one idea. That's one idea I wanted to speak about. The other idea the Torah here says, Torah says in chapter 28, verse 3, you shall speak to all the wise-hearted people who I've invested with spirit of wisdom. They shall make the vestments of Aaron to sanctify him to minister to me. So God says that anyone who's wise-hearted and has a spirit of wisdom, you'll make the big day kahuna. They'll be the ones in charge of making the big day kahuna of the priestly garments. So my Rebbe over here asks a very important question. What is wisdom? Wisdom is not in the heart. Where is wisdom? It's right here. Right? So all you men out there put on tefillin. It's here because you want it to go in. You put it on your arm as well. If you're right hand, if you write with your right hand, so you put it on your left hand right here, right on the muscle there. But it turns in and faces to the heart. Right, so it does have influence on the heart. But wisdom doesn't come from the heart. Where does wisdom come from? Right here, right from the brain. So, what is the explanation of chacham leiv? A wise person who has, wisdom of heart. It should have said wisdom of head, wisdom of moach, wisdom of brain, not wisdom of heart. Wisdom of heart means that a person should merit, that he should have a pure heart serving God, and that the wisdom that he gets will go to his heart and sanctify himself for the sake of God. It'll help him serve God better. Not only that, someone who's wise and has wisdom, it's not enough that he has wisdom. He wants more wisdom. And more, so he can grow, so he can understand things better. Understand things more in a sophisticated way. Get deeper levels, so to speak. A person who knows a lot could rest on his laurels. He could rest on his laurels and say, look how much I know. I don't have to think so much. I don't have to work so hard. Look how much I know. It's not enough. Can always dig deeper and deeper. That's what the wisdom of the heart is. Because the more you dig, and the more you understand, not only is it going to make you humble, make you feel pretty small, at the same time, it's going to give you a greater awareness of who God is and what He does, and what He continues to do. The Rebbe here gives an example. If you look at Malachim, if you look at the book of Kings 1:3, God asked King Solomon the following question. He says, what do you want? I'll give you whatever you want. Solomon said, the only thing I want is a heart to understand, to be able to judge your people, to understand between good and evil. You could have asked for wealth. You could have asked for long life. He didn't. He asked for wisdom. He asked for wisdom to be able to judge the people. God answered him, I'll give you what you asked for, but not only that, the fact that you didn't ask me for long life, you didn't ask me for wealth, you didn't ask me that your enemies be vanquished, you asked me for wisdom. You asked me for something to be able to judge the people in a better way. So I'm going to do what you wanted, and I'm going to give you the other things as well. Right? I'll give you long life. I'll put the enemies in your hand. And I'll give you wealth. I'll give you great wealth. So you see that wisdom is extremely important. Right? King Solomon held that was the most important thing. And God gave him everything else as well. Why? Now, wisdom is a double-edged sword. If a person has wisdom, he has to use it properly. A person can gain a tremendous amount of wisdom in Torah, and a person can have nothing to do with Torah. So my Rebbe calls a frummer student. What's a frummer student? A frummer student means that, they are really religious, but they're a student. They're religious as a student. What does that mean? It means you have somebody that, enjoys learning Torah and, gains a lot of knowledge but has no impact on their life. Learning Torah to them is no different than learning mathematics. It doesn't have any effect on their life. Well, according to that, that's not Torah. Why? The purpose of Torah is to change a person. You're supposed to learn, want to learn more, want to be better, want to become closer to God. Gaining wisdom for wisdom's sake is nothing. You can have the greatest wise people in the world, and they can be totally immoral, unethical, etc. Because there's knowledge, there's wisdom, and there are other things. One doesn't necessarily have a connection, to the other. Famous story with Aristotle, right? Aristotle's a brilliant philosopher, and is tremendously immoral. When his students caught him once, they said, you, famous Aristotle philosopher, how could you do such a thing? And he said, this is Aristotle the philosopher, it's Aristotle the other guy. Two different people. We don't hold that way. Right? Torah says how you act, what you're supposed to do. Whether we live up to the ideals or not doesn't matter. But we don't say, wow, Torah applies in this case, for me it doesn't. Right? It's a totally different thing. It's not true. So, my Rebbe here says at the end that we should pray always, that we should merit the true wisdom of the heart. The true wisdom of the heart is learning in order to do. Learning will draw us closer to God. And God should answer us and give us that wisdom. That's a tremendous thing. We can merit tremendous things if we use it properly. If we use it like, any other knowledge, then what has it done for us? It hasn't done very much. The only thing it's done is made us maybe a little bit smarter. Maybe it allowed us to be better at analyzing things. Could be. Did it make me a better person? Did it make me more moral? See, the Torah has tremendous ideals that we have to live up to. Many times we don't. Doesn't mean that we're not striving. Doesn't mean we don't make mistakes. And that's what the evil inclination wants. Tell you it's too hard, you can't do it. It keeps knocking you down, and you fail. So what? So you pick yourself up and you keep going. And you keep moving. The worst thing a person can say is, I'm very happy where I am. Right? As my Rebbe here points out also. You should never be satisfied with what you have in spirituality. Comes to money, we're never satisfied. We always want more. If you have 100, you want 200. 200, you want 400. Spirituality is no different. Except that the spiritual soul is insatiable. If you don't fill it up with Torah, you fill it up with garbage. And you continue to fill it up with garbage till you need a snorkel in order to breathe. We're striving for greatness. That's what we want. You think the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, is going to allow it? He's going to say, you drop dead. I'm going to nail you. I'm going to take my Louisville Slugger. He doesn't want to make it easy. Because he doesn't want to make it easy, the harder he makes it, see my Boston accent coming out, the harder he makes it, the more benefit you get, the more merit that you get. As they say, no pain, no gain. If it's easy, there's a problem. So if a person's trying to reach higher spiritual levels, do not think the evil inclination is going to make it easy. It's going to make you sweat. It's going to knock you down. It's going to put obstacles in your way. Question is, how badly do you want it? If you don't want it so bad, it'll kill you. Even if you do want it so bad, it'll still try and kill you. That's what we pray for. We pray that God put this in my mind and keep it there. Don't allow me, just because I did certain things last year that were good, that's good enough. Right? The Torah is as vast as the sea. Right? As vast as the cosmos. Multiple levels a person can reach. You're satisfied where you are? You don't want that. That's like saying, I'm just happy being mediocre. God's not interested in mediocrity. He wants you to be the best you can be. Again, it doesn't say it's easy. See, nothing in life is easy. Anything worthwhile is hard. In whatever field it is, it doesn't matter. You work, you strive, you get knocked down, it's hard, person gets injured, gets back up. You got to be determined. We'll make a big distinction here. Look at professional athletes, what they go through. Forget steroids and everything else. Everything being equal, it's amazing what they go through. All the training, all the hours, setbacks, injuries, other things. Why? Because they want to be the best. Alright, they may want to cheat to be the best, but they want to be the best. Essentially, they want to be the best. Some don't have to work so hard because they have natural talent. And the natural talent with a little bit of work, makes them heads and shoulders above everyone else. Other people don't have that talent, but have to work and work and work. They have a tremendous amount of satisfaction. Eventually getting there, because they know where they came from. Someone who started up here and then went a little bit further didn't have that struggle. Might have had other struggles, but not that. Who has more satisfaction? There's one who worked and clawed and, started from scratch, started from the bottom, worked his way up. Not someone who was already good, just had to tweak, a few things. That's why, when we see certain things, we see, where some people have been and where they got to, it's truly amazing. How hard they worked, how motivated. Everything is dependent right here. Dependent on the heart. It depends how much you want. Right? But you need the wisdom to be put into the heart. And then you have to act on it. Yeah, gaining the wisdom, anybody who wants it can come get it. Takes effort. It takes strength. Torah weakens a person. You got to be dedicated day in and day out. You have to have goals. How much you want to learn, what you want to accomplish. You have to make it realistic. And then you have to go and do it. And again, evil inclination is certainly not going to make it easy. It doesn't matter when a person starts. Look what Rabbi Akiva became. Right? Rabbi Akiva started learning when he was 40. The most important thing is ratzon, desire. Then you have to keep that fire lit and you have to run with it. You make the effort, God's going to help you. No one, whoever learns Torah, is ever stuck. Not stuck. They don't, what I mean is that they don't get the benefit. In other words, person can't say, I learned and I didn't get anything out of it. If you did, then you did something wrong. Because there's always what to gain. And even if we're starting at the beginning, Whatever we learn is a building block for the future. And you build little by little by little. In the end, you're going to have something in your hand. You got to be patient, though. You don't get everything in one shot. It takes time, takes effort. People say, oh, it's so easy. You sit and learn all day. Or now it's, part of the day, whatever. Yeah, you want to try it? A person learns like they should. Their brain hurts. It weakens a person. But you see, if you're consistent and you want it so bad, you'll gain. How do I know? I know people who it's happened to, and you're looking at one that it's happened to as well. But only through sheer desire. In doing it for the sake, because that's what God wants from me. And He wants me to take the knowledge and use it, and to change, and to be a better person, and to give that over to others. Anything greater than that? Nothing. I just want to let everyone know, I also give conversion classes and Noahide classes. You can take a look at my Facebook page, my Facebook fan page at Beyond Orthodox Conversion to Judaism. Also, my Noahide page at Beyond Noahides. Also, you can take a look at my blog, rabbichaimcoffman.blogspot.com, RabbiChaimCoffman.blogspot.com. Everyone have a great Shabbos.